Hi everybody, welcome to A Case of the Jills. Happy Friday! Before we get started today, I actually have a couple of updates. The first, well, I'm not sure if you remember back a little while ago when I did a vlog and took you up to campus with me. I went to the bookstore to buy my dad a hat, and I sort of mentioned something about not wanting to get any school merchandise logo kind of stuff until I was after the midterm. I wanted to know how I did, and I wanted to this is so terrible for me to say it, but I really wanted to kind of like deserve it. And then a lot of you know that I was studying a lot for the midterm and it was super stressful and it took forever for the grades to come out. But I just have one thing to say. Not that I could get this hat on top of this big mop, but I did great on the midterm. I'm super excited. And actually I am all registered for the winter and spring terms, which is so exciting and it feels real and I cannot wait. The next class I'm taking actually in the winter term is on the psychology of coaching, which I feel is going to be incredibly important for all of us in this community, and it's going to allow me to talk to you in a way that's hopefully more impactful about this whole life change that we're going through. Speaking of, this leads me to my second news item. When I started school, I actually stopped doing consult calls with all of you because I wanted to make sure I had the time for studying and I was worried about my time commitment. But by popular request, and I feel a little more settled in my study schedule, counseling calls or the opportunity to schedule counseling calls are back up on the website. All you need to do is go to acaseofthejills.com, scroll down to where it says coaching and mentoring, and grab a time on my calendar. Of course, I love getting all the emails I get from you, but even more than that, I love the opportunity to connect with you one-on-one, on the phone, live, where we can really dig into some issues. Okay, so lately on this channel, we have been talking a lot about psychology. We've been talking a lot about the psychology of sort of what led us to all the decisions that we made that got us to where we are, the psychology of moving through that phase, and then also kind of moving past that phase. But for some of us, we're kind of still right in the thick of it, where the day-to-day decisions that we make may be impacting our health in ways that we're not really sure of yet. I wish often that looking back on when I was training at a very high level that I had sort of indicators or red flags of, hey, this XYZ thing that I'm doing right now, this is probably not going to lead to a good outcome. And of course, how would I ever understand that unless someone like me who had already been through it were to say, hey, see that thing right there that you're doing? That's not going to be helpful. But I didn't have anyone like me. So today I've decided to be me. I'm gonna share with you 8 mistakes that I made either on a daily or a weekly basis that directly impacted the outcome of my health as an athlete. I've got 4 nutritional and 4 for training. It is my sincere hope that after watching this video, you can kind of take a critical look at the way that you're behaving in the course of your training day and see if some of these things match up. If you see yourself doing one or more of these things, like, this is the time to stop and really regroup and think. Okay, we're gonna start with nutrition. My number 1 mistake was always running on an empty stomach. I really do not know where I got it in my head along the way that it was gonna be good for me to run fasted. I think that it initially started out of trying to not get stomach upset at the beginning of a long run, especially if it was gonna be a 3, 4, 5 hour training run. I used to get stomach upset, which I used to relate to my celiac disease, but could be for any reason. I didn't want to start the day with a heavy stomach, and so I noticed that if I was on an empty stomach, I would not have stomach pains and stomach cramps, and I wouldn't have to stop and all these different things. The problem is that starting off with an empty stomach may have the positive effect of not hurting my stomach, but in fact what was happening is that I was running in a state of depletion most of the time. You eat dinner, let's say 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then you go to sleep, you wake up the next morning. Even if your training run starts super early, 5 or 6 a.m., that's still like 12 or more hours with no caloric intake. I do know that you don't have to be an endurance athlete to exercise in a fasted state. It's even a fad now in certain sports, such as bodybuilding. And I have said this many times before, but I would strongly caution you against this. My number 2 mistake was not eating enough carbohydrates post-run. Actually, it was not eating enough carbohydrates in general. Many of you have heard my story before about celiac disease and how it affected me in terms of fear of eating starchy carbohydrates. It's a crappy excuse, whatever, but it is the justification that I gave myself for cutting out starchy carbohydrates from my diet. There's a ton of science behind this, of course, which we can discuss at a later date, but suffice it to say that if your carbohydrate intake, especially post-exercise, is not adequate, you are definitely doing yourself a disservice. I know that I was doing myself a major disservice. My third mistake was relying solely on engineered products, so gels or chews or whatever, for fueling during my endurance exercise. This may be a little more of a subjective kind of conversation. What I mean by that is that definitely with regard to endurance exercise, not everything works the same for everybody. But for me personally, I know that I always relied on gels or like chewy solid things. It helped my stomach not cramp up and freak out in the middle of a race. I am very aware of the fact that eating while you're engaging in endurance activity, it requires just as much training as your legs do sometimes. Your body does get better at processing solid foods if you practice doing that, but I was always too afraid and too lazy to do that. I think that if I had supplemented with real food with some, protein and some fat, that it would have allowed me to sustain my energy and not tap into my own body tissues in order to fuel my run. I know that's an uncomfortable thought, but the fact is that if your body doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to keep you going, it's gonna take them right from your own tissues. Whether that's muscle or bone, that is gonna be what happens. Your body is gonna catabolize itself. Again, this is a little subjective, but I would say that if you are only relying on a small amount of just sugar calories during your runs, definitely think about that. The fourth mistake I made was to eat more only around my longer runs. What I mean by that is that during the week when I was running sort of moderate distances, let's say no more than 10 miles, I would eat kind of on a normal person schedule. And then on the weekends when I was running more, I would eat more. I know that this kind of sounds like it makes sense, but the fact is that your caloric needs as a very high level endurance athlete, meaning high volume, because Lord knows I wasn't fast, your caloric needs do not really change from day to day, because when you're not running 20 miles, you're recovering from 20 miles. Your calories definitely need to go up when you're doing a super huge amount of distance, let's say, or you're out there for a very long time. But the fact is that the next day, you still need a lot of calories to recover from the previous day's effort. Keeping my calories low during the week was not helping me recover from those longer efforts on the weekend. A good athlete needs to have a very high level of very good quality nutrition all the time, every day. Those major fluctuations, I think, hurt me in the end. Okay, let's switch over to the 4 training mistakes that I made. I think if you were to summarize all 4 of these, the theme would be, I just never listened to my body. In fact, the first training mistake is the fact that I used to run just about the same mileage, let's say within 4 to 8 miles difference, the same mileage every single week, no matter what. For many people, this may seem like, wow, this is so great, you're so consistent. But the fact is that at the stage where I was, that kind of volume is not sustainable for a long period of time without a few step back weeks or even a step back month. I foolishly got to a volume of training that felt good and just decided that it was going to feel good forever. That, of course, is impossible. The body doesn't work that way. You need to go up and down in your training volume. I guess that just wasn't on my agenda. My second big mistake, and this one also may seem counterintuitive, was getting up at any hour to get a run in. Anytime I had a business trip or I had to fly somewhere, or let's say there was something that I had to do early in the day, I would get up at 3:30, 4 o'clock like it was nothing to get in a 10, 12, 13 mile run, who knows how long. I did this week in and week out. Irrespective of the weather, irrespective of how tired I was, it didn't matter. Pitch blackness, I was up, I was out the door. I think if you do that every now and then, it's probably okay, but the fact is that I was doing that on a weekly basis, and considering the hit of cortisol that my body was taking as it was, I just didn't need that additional stress of no sleep and being awake and probably taking caffeine pills so that I could feel good while I was running and not get a headache. I mean, it was a disaster. Definitely not a good idea. My third mistake was something that I talk about all the time that is a real kind of like, for me, is the active recovery day. I used to do active recovery days. Like, I couldn't possibly imagine having a day where I just did nothing and laid on the couch and watched Netflix. That was impossible to me. So I did what all of the stupid running magazines used to tell you to do, which is have an active recovery day. So go for a gentle walk or go to a yoga class. This was so counterproductive. These days should be precious. We should be guarding them with everything that we have to make sure that it's basically a non-movement day. This is the way that your body recovers. This is the way that you can feel better. This is the way that you can protect yourself and take care of yourself. It's good for you physically. It's good for you mentally. I wish I did more of it. My God, I just was such an idiot. And my fourth mistake was definitely not taking enough downtime between races. I was so bad at this. I just think that I got caught up in, shopping for races on ultrasignup.com, just what are my friends doing this weekend? Especially, and this is no excuse, but living in the Northeast, you have a limited amount of time where the weather is beautiful and all your friends are out running and there's a million races. I totally got caught up with that every year. Of course, when I moved out to the West Coast, I had no excuse because there wasn't a finite amount of time to enjoy races, yet I continued to shop Ultra Sign Up and sign up for races like one after the other. This, I think, is one of the most dangerous aspects of ultra running, and the same thing exists in a lot of other sports, but the idea of just going and signing up for races, becoming race crazy, I think this is a huge danger for a lot of people. And it's understandable, it's social, it's fun, your friends are there, you want to enjoy being outside. I get all the reasons, I had all those reasons, but it's still not good. If I knew then what I know now, right? But it's okay, because that's what I'm here for, to share my mistakes with you so that you don't make them. So remember, if you are a new subscriber and you have questions that I haven't covered on the last few videos, please go ahead to acaseofthejills.com and download a copy of the ebook of Frequently Asked Questions. You can also, again, schedule a chat with me via the website. Don't forget to email Addie if you would like to submit your story to acaseofthejills.com. You can find her email address below. Thank you for following me on Instagram and finding me on Facebook. I hope that you're having a wonderful week, and I hope that you're eating carbs after your run. See you soon.